Coming up, John Landis joins Illeana in just a minute for part 2.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
And now, it's the I Blame Dennis Hopper podcast, starring Illeana Douglas. Eavesdrop with Illeana as she interviews Hollywood's most prominent players about filmmaking, acting, and what really happens on the set of your favorite flicks and TV shows.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Hi, he's schwitzing.
Albert Brooks in broadcast.
Welcome, everyone, to part 2 of the I Blame Dennis Hopper podcast. I have John Landis with us today, who's been so nice to continue talking with me. Of course, he is a director, screenwriter, actor, and producer of such films as National Lampoon's Animal House, The Blues Brothers, An American Werewolf in London, Into the Night, the documentary Mr. Warmth, Trading Places, Three Amigos, Coming to America, on and on. The Stupids. You know, we talked to Tom Arnold about The Stupids. I'm a big fan of The Stupids.
Thank you. I'm very proud of that movie.
I love that movie. I don't quite.
It's the only time I ever made a movie deliberately for children. It's a children's film. They're supposed to be 8 or 9.
Yeah.
But they sold it kind of like a tits and ass teenage. It was completely bizarre.
Yeah, but when you actually, I was working with Tom, and he suggested that
he's great in it.
That I see it, and I said, I love this movie. What did you know? So again, it needs another DVD.
Captain Kangaroo is in that.
Yes, it's. But anyway, The Stupids, for everyone out there, is another great film of yours. Okay, we were talking about. We're just gonna launch into some of the movies you did. How did you get your first movie of Kentucky Fried Movie? Do you even remember?
Sure, I was. Gonna have to tell it really quick. I had gone to Europe because of Andrew Martin told me Bundy said if I could get to Belgrade, Yugoslavia, maybe I could get a job on a movie called The Warriors, which became Kelly's Heroes. Big production for MGM, directed by Brian Hutton and starring Clint Eastwood, Telly Savalas, Donald Sutherland, Don Rickles.
Right.
I met Don. And the Yugoslav army playing Nazis and GIs. And you know who was in it? I read to you about East of Eden was Dick Davalos. You know who that is?
That name sounds very familiar.
That's James Dean's
the brother, yes.
So James Dean and Dick Davalos come out from New York and make their first picture. And Dick Davalos is nominated for an Oscar. And no one ever hears about him again. And when I saw him in Yugoslavia, I'm thinking, I know that guy. Anyway.
So you work on that.
I had the best time of my life on that. It was a huge, very strange movie. That was a big hit. Lots of explosions and World War II. And it was wonderful because it was kind of an out-of-control production.
Right.
A very international crew. We were behind, it's 1969, so behind the Iron Curtain meant something.
Right.
And while we were there 9 months, and while we were there, we landed on the moon. There was Chappaquiddick, the Manson murders, Woodstock. I mean, all this stuff, but we were like in another planet, you know? It was an extraordinary experience, and Brian Hutton, the director, was very kind to me. And I had all the pleasure of making a gigantic movie and none of the responsibility.
Yes. And you worked so many times subsequently with Don Rickles. Did anything occur on the set that you guys became friends, or it was just
he was so funny. I mean, his reason for being there was to break Eastwood's balls because he just was merciless. Well, you know him.
Yeah. I mean,
you know,
genius.
Did you see Mr. Warmth?
Yes, of course.
There's a wonderful clip.
I'm a huge Don Rickles fan, and you're a fan, and it won an Emmy.
2 Emmys. Anyway, there's.
Thank you.
Who's counting? But Don Rickles in Mr. Warmth, there's the scene where he's attacking Marty on the Tonight Show.
Yes.
And what I love about it is poor Marty Scorsese, who's asthmatic, doesn't have his
asthma spray.
And I'm watching it thinking Don's going to kill him.
Yes.
I mean, he's gasping for breath.
Yeah. That's how it was on the set of Casino. It was like,
well, you know what?
The only person who didn't think he was funny was Joe Pesci.
Well, I know why, too. But you know what's interesting about Casino is that I really felt Rickles was not good in it. He was okay, but the way De Niro works, you do so many takes.
Right.
Don is great on his first and second take, and
Yes.
he was old.
Right.
So by the time Bobby and Marty got what they wanted, he was standing there. He was spent, and I think because I knew him so well, I could see that. But it's such brilliant casting.
They shot a lot of it at night.
Yeah.
And so they
well,
would.
that's for him. He was a nocturnal animal, even at that age.
Right, but I think that might. I wondered if that had something to do with it. You know, they'd go wake him up at in his trailer, and he'd have to get dressed. But you're right. The shots were so complicated that they would just take a very, very long time, and may have,
But Casino's a movie that gets better every time you see it. It's amazing.
Yes, I agree. That's one of those. I watched it recently for one of our TCM shows, and I enjoyed it more. And I was on the set a lot too, so but I enjoyed a lot of it.
Sometimes that hurts your appreciation of a movie.
Being when you're on set.
When you're part
exactly.
of it. You know, it's difficult.
You cast
to
people. I
step-
cast people.
Yeah, to
and
step away and really see it.
Yeah.
And I've had experiences with movies I've worked on and I directed where years later I see them and I go, gee, that's good. Whereas I hated it the first time I saw it.
One of the times when I met you, you don't even remember this. I remember this though. The trivia is I said one of the things I loved about Animal House was the bottle throwing off camera is unbelievable. It's like someone throwing a pie. It's just a bottle is thrown exactly when you want it. It almost hits the person, but it doesn't. And you told me you threw the bottles. You were throwing the bottles.
Tommy Hulse called me the poltergeist. I was always throwing stuff at the actors, always, and never telling them. The only time I told them was John Belushi, and it's quite remarkable when he makes his entrance into the frat house with Pinto and Flounder.
Yeah.
He knocks a bunch of beer cans, and then I told him I'm going to barrel a beer bottle at him, and I said, I just want you to take it from the air. And you got to remember, John was an athlete.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone thinks of him as bloated, but in
Right.
fact, he was, we used to say, he's Albanian, strong like tractor, smart like bull. But John was, he was a football hero.
Yeah.
The guy was really a dancer, really
Yeah.
amazingly light-footed, like a lot of big guys. And so I told him, I don't want to rehearse it, but I just want you to take it from the air. He said, okay. So look at that. It's unbelievable. When they walk in everything, and I just yelled, I take my voice up, I yelled, jump, boom, and he just goes, like literally, it's like he takes it from the air. He's amazing.
Well, again, it's one of the things I love is that it's so funny, but it's not self-conscious. There's no, that's my favorite kind of comedy, where it's just, you're just looking at the whole sort of
Almost all the comedy in Animal House is character comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very wonderful actors, and there's a lot of slapstick.
Right.
But it's a very smart. I mean, Chris Miller and Harold Ramis, and especially Doug Kenny, were very, very smart guys. Mm-hmm. And they were all in university in '62. And after we worked on it a while, I mean, it's their script, it's their story, and it's very smart.
Right, but I'm just going to point out, it's the way he shot it. Like, so when Donald Sutherland goes in the kitchen and reaches up to get something, and there's not you don't cut to a reaction of someone going, oh,
Well, you know why that's in the movie, or why that happened? Karen has her version, Don has his version.
Okay.
Don recently gave an interview in which he this total fantasy where he said, I would shoot it, but I promised him I wouldn't use it, and he told his wife he wouldn't. Well, first of all, he wasn't married to the same wife at the time,
okay,
and she wasn't. It was like, what? What happened was I wanted Karen, as she entered frame, to drop her T-shirt down so that her tushy would be exposed.
Right.
And Karen was horrified. She said, "You didn't tell me, and I don't think so." And I mean, her reaction was very big. And I said, "All right, you don't have to do it. It's going to be literally 4 frames, and it's just to show that you've been intimate with someone as you're in it."
Right.
And then Don said, "Karen, if you're an actor, you're an actor." And then he said, "Look," and he dropped his pants right there. And I said, "Okay, will you show your ass in the movie, Don?" "Absolutely." So he did it really for her. And it gave me a nice button.
I love it. It's hysterical.
But also Marlon Brando, Donald Sutherland, I'm trying to think, James Conn, there were a bunch of actors, Duvall, who really liked mooning people. They were always sticking...
Nicholson, supposedly, right?
They're always sticking their ass out of windows of cars.
That's something I've
Academy Award winning.
The other thing you did very innovatively was get music by the great Elmer Bernstein.
Absolutely.
And
that became a style. I said, well, first of all, I've said the same shit so many times. Same stuff, sorry.
Okay.
It's too late now.
Sorry. I went to a school called Oakwood for the 9th grade and part of the 10th grade. And then I'm a high school dropout. I'm a bad example. Stay in school.
Stay in school, kids.
Yeah. Don't do what first of all, you couldn't do what I did now.
You had a great life. Are you kidding? Being a mail boy?
The best part was Spain. I worked on like 70 movies in Spain. Anyway, go ahead. So
You went to Oakwood.
And I went to school this is interesting. Oakwood School now it's this big thing in the Valley. It's this big institution. Mm-hmm. When I went to Oakwood for that year and a half, it had been started in the 50s by a bunch of Hollywood lefties. Right. Robert Ryan, a bunch of Hollywood lefties, and for their kids to go to elementary school. All those kids grew up and now had to go to junior high, so they started Oakwood Secondary School. Mm-hmm. And it was at Hidden Trails Camp in Agoura. Do you know that? In Agoura, it's right by Wizen's.
Yes.
That water tower. Well, Agoura now is, people live there, but in 1964 and 5, it was where they made all the Westerns. There was nothing there, rattlesnakes, and, it was the country. And so we were schlepped out there on a bus an hour and a half every day and back. It was great. And it was total hip. It was 65. We were hippies. I mean, totally. Yeah. We had long hair, which meant something then. And the reason I'm telling you all that is because the first year I was there were 50 kids. The second year, 55. But among those kids I was on a scholarship, so anyway. But were the children of Elmer Bernstein, Alex North, Jerry Goldsmith, and Ernest Gold, who are like four of the leading Hollywood composers. It was like, what? So I knew Elmer. Elmer, when I was 15, took Peter and I and Greg, his brother, to see the Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl.
Wow.
But you couldn't hear them, but you could see them. Anyway, so I knew Elmer.
Yeah.
But the head of the music department didn't know I knew Elmer. And so when he said to me, who do you want to score the picture? And I said, Elmer Bernstein. He literally laughed in my face and said, he won't take your call, John. So I was like thinking, oh, yeah. So I called Elmer, and he came and watched it. And he thought it was very funny. And he said, well, why am I here? And I said, I want you to score it straight. I want it to be essentially a straight score. Because the style of comedic score was like the Pink Panther or Henry Mancini. It's comedy music.
Right, of course.
And I said I want it to be dramatic, mostly really serious. Like, it's like not funny what's going on. And he did a brilliant job, and that became the style, the way comedy's been scored ever since. And Elmer, who had scored, he was famous for his Western scores, he was famous for his epic scores, he was famous for his jazz scores. And the guy who did The Man with the Golden Arm and The Ten Commandments and Magnificent Seven, for years he couldn't get a job unless it was a comedy. He scored then, so Animal House, Ghostbusters, Blues Brothers, Trading Places, Airplane. Wow. He scored the most successful comedies of all time. And finally he stopped. He said, I can't fucking stand it. I don't want a comedy. And Marty actually had him
Cape Fear.
Do the Cape Fear.
Yeah, he did the same score.
And then he did, because he was very good friends with Bernie Herrmann.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to think of the director. Far From Heaven. Was it Far From Heaven? I'm terribly embarrassed. I can't think of it. But his last movie was a big drama.
Yeah. So he got back. He
Yeah.
got back to that.
But Elmer, he scored My Left Foot for free. He said, because it's not a comedy.
So then after the, were you at all surprised? I mean, so the Animal House comes out and it's a huge hit. And what did you
Surprised? I think shocked.
really?
Yeah.
That it just caught hold.
Animal House was not all of my films.
You can thank my generation, incidentally, because we were. That
Were
was
you in college when it came out?
no, I was in high school. It was like that's the sweet spot of my, going.
It was
to,
R-rated. How did you get in?
You snuck in. I mean, that was key. It was like a huge, big
It's
deal.
it's a good movie. When people say, why do you think it's all good movies? It really has a great cast, a great script. It's very funny, and it still resonates. Look, Laurel and Hardy make me laugh more than anyone, and that was a long time ago.
Yes, I love Laurel and Hardy.
You know.
And so then after you made that, did you have a plan to make your next movie, or you just were looking at different properties?
I had hoped to make an American Werewolf in London that I had written while on Kelly's Heroes, and of course I was, thrown out of offices. I did a lot of work as a stunt person. It's a long involved. You don't want to know this. And then I worked as a writer quite a bit, and I was on I did a gag on the $6 Million Man, and trying to think. I'm in Death Race 2000. I'm in just a bunch of weird movies.
Corman movies?
Just weird movies. Anyway, but when Schlock, I made Schlock in 1971.
Right, which is your first film.
My first film, and I made that with all the money I'd made in Europe. So it was like $30,000, and then I raised the other 30. It was made for 60. It's a terrible movie. Although,
I watched the trailer on Trailers from Hell.
well, that's the re-release trailer.
which you were kind enough to. I love all of your Trailers from Hell. You can spend, like you said, it's a wormhole.
Trailers from Hell is a wormhole, absolutely.
So I watched a bunch of your, trailer.
Mine ranged from excellent to completely silly. There's sometimes a lot of people really prepare and do work.
I prepare. I'm
I
one of the new ones.
just basically. I mean, I'm doing movies I know.
Yeah.
My favorite. This has nothing to do with my favorite, but I look at a lot of them and I think, gee, I wish he'd take this down, because some of them I give misinformation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but the one thing for the Three Stooges,
I missed that one.
Half Rocket Will Travel or something.
Okay.
I talk about how the dialogue. There's a long scene.
Yeah.
That I let play, and I talk about how the dialogue was by Noel Coward, but he refused credit because it would say Coward and Howard. And he felt that was ridiculous. And it goes on. It's just, I'm just lying out my ass on this thing. And I'm thinking, somebody's watching this going, Noel Coward wrote the dialogue.
I know. Luckily these days, I don't
But
know.
but that's a wonderful website.
I love it. Trailers from
Joe
Hell.
Dante's.
I'm doing a couple more. I'm going to be doing a big movie I love called The Swimmer. Which is,
Burt Lancaster.
I'm obsessed.
Is that Frank Perry? No.
It is Frank Perry, but it has an interesting. I don't want to give anything away, but Burt Lancaster, I guess, like after the movie was over, reshot a number of scenes, recast an actress, and Sidney Pollack actually directed some of the key scenes in the film. So it's an interesting. I don't know. And again, didn't do well when it came out.
No, it was a disaster.
I know, but I love
But
it.
he made a lot at that time of his career. He started making a lot of really interesting,
I know.
strange,
Fascinating, right?
But Burt Lancaster and Tony Curtis and Kirk Douglas, they were very brave. I mean, they played all these leading men, and I'm Spartacus, and I'm Tony Curtis, and I'm this, and then they made my favorite movie, The Sweet Smell of Success.
The best.
For Tony Curtis to play that reprehensible guy.
Yeah.
Ooh, that movie's. You want to take a shower after you watch.
Yeah, that's a great film. Burt Lancaster, one of my favorite actors.
Did you know him?
No, but I'm obsessed with him.
I worked on a movie called Valdez is Coming.
Okay.
And he was kind of scary.
He seems like it.
He was a big man.
You know who talked about him? Bruce Davison worked with him.
That movie, Ulzana's Raid.
Yeah.
Bruce's first movie. That's a really good movie.
Yes. So
Bruce has very funny stories.
very funny stories.
How
but
is Bruce? I haven't seen him in years.
Bruce is great. Bruce works all the time.
He's so good.
I know, he's great. We did a movie together, but we've stayed friends. And he's got, again, he worked with Ernest Borgnine.
Everybody.
He's surprisingly, again, whenever anyone's worked with like the great Hollywood icons, that always, I did something with Ernest Borgnine, but at this point in his career, he played an elevator operator in a sitcom, and it was surreal. It was the same thing like you said, Illeana, we have to go. I was like, who cares about our show? I just want to talk to Ernest Borgnine, hear about
He had
Johnny
good
Guitar.
stories. He had very good stories.
Oh, he had great ones. Okay, but back to you. Let's get to
You want a good Ralph Bellamy story?
sure, please.
I'll tell you my favorite movie story.
Okay.
Okay, this is my. But then I want to talk about
All
your
right.
book, which I just read.
I love it.
I bought it. I got here and she gave me a hardbound.
Aw.
I went on Amazon and got a paperback that I read.
And you can go on Audible and she narrates it.
Which is better, hardbound, paperback, or narrated?
The hardbound.
I say
think.
hardbound. Several
Right?
people have said to me, don't even
Oh, they
just
like
go
the-
straight to the Audible because they love your voice.
Wait till they see the next one. Well, that's
I
the
can't
thing.
wait.
The dark one.
The dark
Yeah.
one. The next one is going to be the dark one.
This is the happy one.
Yeah.
And the next one's the dark one.
Yeah,
Oh,
the-
In this book, she intimates she'll bring up something and go, never mind. Enough
That's-
about
that's
that.
for book
and now
two.
on to this.
That's right. That's right. And then it all ends with a smile, like a Rudy Valley kind of.
But that's a good story about Rudy Valley, and I have a similar story.
Okay, tell me your Ralph Bellamy story.
There's this Ralph Bellamy, who was a great. He was. You have to understand his career. He started in Chautauqua, which is tense, and then was in regional theater, and then in vaudeville. Ralph was in vaudeville, and then eventually became quite a Broadway star. Has several Tonys for Sunrise at Campobello and Detective Story and all these shows. Anyway, he was an amazing career and very tall, like 6'4", very handsome, and brilliant comedian. I mean, if you see him in the Leo McCarey movies, he's drop dead funny.
And His Girl Friday, of course.
Oh my God.
Hysterical.
His Girl Friday's perfect. That's where Cary Grant on the phone
That guy looks.
to the hooker. He says,
He's just, I don't know. The guy looks like Ralph Bellamy.
says, you look like that actor, Ralph Bellamy. Also, he calls someone else Archie Leach.
Yes.
They go, wasn't he arrested?
And he looks at
That's
the
funny.
camera, actually.
Does he?
Yeah, there's one weird thing where he literally looks directly at the camera, and I think somebody must have been, and they left it in.
Billy Gilbert, I think, walks away with that movie.
Uh-huh.
When he comes back, his one scene where he's,
Yeah.
it's so dazzling that. Anyway, and Roswell Russell, that's a great movie.
It's a great film.
But back to Ralph.
Yes.
I'm shooting Trading Places. We're in Philadelphia. We're outside of Philadelphia. It's bitter cold. I'm telling you, below zero. It's bitter cold. And I'm in an insert car towing this big Rolls Royce with Ralph Bellamy, Eddie Murphy, and Don Amici in the back. And the actors had a space heater in there, so they were very cozy. The crew, everybody on the truck are all in these giant parkas. Everyone looks like the Michelin Man, And we're towing them around, and we're way the fuck. I mean, we're like 3 hours in Philadelphia, and this is before cell phones, and we're shooting. And I didn't say that word. If you heard a profanity, it's your filthy mind. Anyway, we're out in the forest, and I'm filming this dialogue scene, and the generator on the insert car goes out. Which means you're dead in the water. I mean, basically, that's it. So our cops, one goes that way and one goes that way to try to get help on their motorcycles. And we're just sitting by the side of the road. And the actors are fine because they're in the car with the space heater. We're freezing to death. Now, you should know it's Philadelphia in the winter, so I have about 5.5-hour days to shoot light. Plus, I was going through legal problems, and I just had a fight with Paramount, with Mr. Katzenberg, because they hated that I cast Danny Aykroyd, Jamie Lee Curtis. It's a long story, but in any case, I'm under a lot of pressure, and I'm furious because I'm going to lose the day. I mean, I'm like, oh shit, and we have to go to New York, and it's a big thing. So I'm walking up and down the side of this road, in these woods, this one-lane road. And everybody's over there, and I'm walking up and down, pacing back and forth. And it's been 45 minutes, an hour. You know, it's starting to get dark. And suddenly I hear, Johnny. And I turn around, and it's Ralph. And he's wearing his wardrobe. So there's this nice camel hair coat, you know, thin leather gloves, and a Homburg. But it's freezing cold. I said, Ralph, get in the car. He said, Johnny, I have to talk to you. I said, Ralph, get in the car. I mean, Ralph's 80, whatever he was, and I'm thinking, I don't want him to die out here. You have to get in the car. And he says, no, this is important. And now I'm like, Ralph, will you get in the goddamn car? Get in the car. And he says, no, this is really important. Okay, Ralph, what? So then he tells me this story. And the story is, it's 1983. And the story is, two internationally famous neurosurgeons, the most famous brain surgeons in the world, who are famous for microsurgery, and they're just extraordinarily gifted doctors, one in New York and one in Boston. There's a terrible crash, and incredibly important politician, international figure, is seriously injured, and both doctors are rushed by helicopters to Bethesda Hospital to try and save this man's life. It's unbelievably important. And they arrive, and they scrub, and they rush in, and they remove the top of his cranium, which is pretty crushed, and they work 5 hours. This Herculean efforts with microsurgery, you know, and they're just trying, and they lose the patient. So they go into the scrub room and covered in blood. And one of them takes off his gloves and he looks at his colleague, and the other doctor's despondent. I mean, thoroughly, not only spent, but profoundly upset, depressed. And his friend, the other doctor, says, look, he puts his arm around him and he says, it's not like we're making movies. And I just looked at Ralph. And I thought, you got it. The joke, you can't. And then I realized it was funny. And it just suddenly I wasn't angry. And I've made, 12, 15 movies since then. And I've never lost my temper on a movie set, ever. I mean, it's not like, you know, it's not brain surgery.
Right. Well, good old
So
Ralph.
he totally. And this guy was a major radio star, the first TV star. Do you? You're too young, but there was a TV. I'm too young too, but there was a TV series, the first regular series called Man Against Crime, which was he was a detective in New York, and it was shot live in Grand Central Station in 50.
Wow.
49, 50, 51, 52. He was a Broadway star, but the guy was a movie star. And the other Ralph Bellamy stories is very quickly, you talk about olds. Whenever I work with actors like Eddie Bracken or Yvonne DiCarlo or Vera Miles, or I mean, I've worked with many great old timers, you know, people who had long careers in the films. They know things, especially from the studio days, but they know their marks. They're camera-wise. If an actor, they'll clear for camera just automatically. If they go up on a line, they'll just pause and continue. They know everything. And they're helpful. They're just the best. They're always ready on time. And I had this moment on same movie, Trading Places. We're in Rittenhouse Square, Philadelphia, below zero. It's the scene with Eddie with no legs, you know, and the exterior of the club. And the call was 7 o'clock in the morning, and Eddie's call was I think 8 to shoot at 8:30, and then Ralph and Don's call was at like 10. So it's 7 in the morning. It's one of the things I really like about movies is the whole circus thing. You know, you move the trucks. I really do. And get the burrito off the caterer in the morning. I just enjoy that gypsy part of it. And somebody says to me, is that Ralph and Don? And we look, and there's Ralph Bellamy and Don Amici, like 6 blocks away, walking down these huge Philadelphia blocks at 7:05. And I said, "What? Get a car, go pick them up." So driver picked them up and came, and I said, "Why are you guys here?" I'll never forget. He takes out of his pocket the call sheet, and he goes, "Look, we're off camera for Eddie here."
Aw.
Wow.
That's great.
And they couldn't find a driver, and they couldn't get a cab, so they walked like a mile.
Ah, that's amazing.
Yeah, they're my favorite actors.
Do you enjoy directing? Some people, love directing. Some people hate it. Some people like it when it's over. Are you one of those people, like you mentioned, going to the set and?
Truthfully, I'm ashamed to say this, but I think filmmaking is fun. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be hard, and unfortunately, a lot of the people there are a lot of people who can't function unless there's chaos. Mm-hmm. So if things are going well, they'll screw it up so they can then take control.
Right.
There's a lot of self-destructive behavior. But no, I mean, for the most of the films I've made go really well. And I've worked on a lot of disasters, and I've worked with, every kind of scenario you could have. But I enjoy the process. The only part of the process that sucks, and it's the worst, is getting the money, getting the job.
Right. That's the hard, and also, again, it seems to sort of roll off your back, dealing with difficult personalities of like, he wants a what? Oh, okay, sure. Like,
It depends.
It
depends on what it is. If someone's being crazy,
right,
that's okay. But if someone's being unreasonably crazy or destructively crazy, that's not okay.
Yeah, I've never had that. I know I had a small experience working with Eddie Murphy on a movie called Pluto Nash. That was not a very good movie, but I like the director a lot, and it was a fun thing to do and get to say you work with Eddie Murphy. But people were so afraid of him by that point, and so intimidated by him that.
Well, that's what he wanted.
Really?
Oh yeah.
But why? Like, so that was a transition from
when I made Trading Places, Eddie was 19 or 20, and he was fabulous. He was full of energy, so gifted, sweet and funny, generous and excited to be there. He was great. And we worked great together. How many years, 5 or 7 years, whatever it was later when I made Coming to America, he was cold and unpleasant, and he was surrounded by the posse. All those guys who, I always call it the mean face.
Right.
Did you ever see Stephen King, Pet Sematary?
Yes.
The first one.
Yes.
With Ed, Herman Munster was his name? Ed Gwynn. Wonderful
yes.
actor.
Good
well,
memory.
there's a baby in it. There's like a 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old, not even 3. And he's like, comes back from the dead. And so they have this little boy, and he's holding this knife. And the director's going, make the mean face. And this sweet little boy's going, grr. It's ridiculous. It's like Night of the Lepus. I'm sorry, I'm not scared of that rabbit. It's not going to work. And there's the thing that bodyguards do. A lot of guys, young men do it where they do the mean face.
Right.
Or doormen, like guys at clubs, they give you the mean face. It's supposed to be intimidating. It always cracks me up because they're doing the mean face. It's opposed. They could kill you, but still, they're trying to. We had a moment on Coming to America. Eddie had a Muslim bodyguard named Muhammad, Mr. Muhammad. And the guy was 9 foot tall, 9 foot wide, wearing, a tux with a bow tie. He was Nation of Islam guy. And he was standing there. And I said, where's Eddie? Bring him to the set. And he's not coming out of the trailer. I said, what do you mean he's not coming? So finally I go. And there's this enormous guy there. And I go, would you please let me in? I want to see Eddie. No one gets in. Okay, my name's John Landis. I'm the director. Please tell Eddie I'm here. And let me in. And he said, I'm sorry, Mr. Murphy. He said, no one gets in. And he's doing the mean face. And I looked at him. I said, what was your name before you were a Muslim? He said, Larry. Which meant I couldn't be scared of him anymore. Anyway, I said, look, please tell Eddie, and I'll take the blame, that we want to shoot. And finally, he couldn't figure out why I wasn't terrified of him. And finally, he went in.
Right.
And Eddie says, well, why haven't you called me? And what happened was he had told this guy, let no one in.
Right.
So this guy, it wasn't Eddie. It was the bodyguard who was he had everybody so scared.
Well, that was my experience on the set was it was so filtered down. Don't talk to him.
Also,
don't
we
look
had
at
a
him.
we had a big disagreement, and I still don't understand what it was about. I really don't know.
A comic disagreement?
No, like a confrontation that I don't know why he got so angry with me.
Well, what was the?
It's a long story, but the
Okay.
bottom line was we decided after a lot of drama that we wouldn't be friends,
Okay.
but we'd finished the movie. And I said, okay, And what was interesting is I really like Eddie, and he's so talented. He really
Right.
is. And we worked together great.
Right.
So we finished the movie, and I never talked to him again. The movie's a big hit. He's wonderful in it. And
Don't you think though in the old days these things would happen all the time?
All the time.
But they'd be forced to work together.
Oh, it's very different.
Betty Davis would hate someone, but they
no, it's very different. The studios
is.
own the actors then. I mean, it's a
Right.
very... Plus,
but they'd swear they'd never gonna work. And then they
when you
would.
realize... But that's true. I mean, Eddie and I were like...
I bet he calls you and you'll want to.
No, what happened was years later, Sherry Lansing called me and said, would you like to make Beverly Hills Cop 3? And I said, who's playing Eddie Murphy? And it turned out Eddie had asked me, and I met with him, and he was very nice, and we sort of made up. And we made that movie, but that movie made a lot of money, that movie, but it was very frustrating. And you can see it in the movie because Eddie wouldn't be funny. He was on time, he was professional, but he wouldn't be funny. And the first Beverly Hills Cop, which is directed
Right.
by Martin Brest, Martin Brest, that's a terrible screenplay. I read that and turned it down. It was when I was offered it was for Stallone. Marty Brest had the good fortune to get Eddie Murphy, recommended by Jeff Katzenberg, and Eddie and Marty, especially Marty, made that movie. That movie's really funny, but everything funny in it is not from the screenplay.
Right.
They just improvised and made stuff up. Bronson Pinchot's character, he's not in the script. That was improvised, I mean, Judge Reinhold, he had funny people, and they really made it funny. And
Right.
so I thought, well, maybe we could do this because we weren't allowed to touch the script because the writer's strike was on, and we had to start right away. And that was a weird experience because we made the movie, and it's not that funny. It's not funny. It's very odd. He wanted to be an action star.
Okay.
And he went and made a couple of movies where he was like an action star. But listen, he's so gifted. And there's a movie he's making right now that I have high hopes for. Larry Kazarinsky wrote the script, and it's about Rudy Ray Moore, Dolomite.
Oh, right, Dolomite.
So I'm hoping that is great.
Yes.
I don't know who's directing it, but
Okay, we've got so much more to do. We're gonna have to do
Not a lot of time.
A part 3, and not a lot of time.
so can we talk about your book?
Yeah, sure. Ask me something about your book. We'll take turns.
Okay, so what is the movie? Oh, damn it. I should have been prepared.
That's okay.
There's a movie you mentioned I never heard of.
Oh wow, I love it. How's that possible?
No, that you're in.
Well, then I'm
It's
in.
got a one-word.
Oh, that's very possible.
A one-word title.
Alive.
Alive?
No, I've heard of Alive.
I don't know.
Now that's a case where Alive, you from the way you write about it, you
Yes.
had a religious experience.
I did.
Have you seen the movie?
Yes, I have. You mean the film doesn't quite...
Alive, the finished movie.
Yes, I have many times. I
What-
promoted it and went around.
Of course. What's interesting to me about that movie
Yeah.
is it captures nothing of what you lived through and what the actors lived through and clearly what was there.
Right.
It's not in the movie. Everybody, you know why everyone talks about the plane crash?
Why?
Because it's the most successful thing in the movie.
Yes. Frank Marshall's foray into directing, but I had a great experience working on it.
You did. I was happy to read about it.
Working on the film. But, this is an interesting thing. This is why I have got launched into more writing and directing. As an actor, all you can do is show up. I was there for 4 months. It was a great experience. I feel as an actor, directing is a completely different thing. You have your hands full. But as an actor, you have 2 experiences. You have acting in the film, and then it's over, and then God knows what's going to end up being on the screen, you just don't know. So I've tried to separate. I've been like you. I just love being in show business. Like I love the.
But it's difficult to separate when people ask me about my movies, or people ask you about. Isn't it difficult to separate your experience of making the movie from the actual film itself?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course. Absolutely.
Because I've worked on movies. None of mine, but I've worked on a number of movies that were nightmares, and everybody hated each other, and it was terrible. And then you see the movie, and it's really good.
Yes.
Which you don't expect. And then I've worked on movies where it was love-in, it was unbelievable, it was rapturous, everybody loved it. You see the movie, and it stinks, and it's just, wow.
But that's one of the mysteries of, of making.
That's what people don't understand. Movie making is alchemy.
Yes, completely. And I want to ask, because the DVD is coming out of Into the Night.
It's out now.
It's out now.
Go to Amazon, rush the
Are
Blu-ray,
you-
the Blu-ray.
Are you a Stanley Donen fan?
Yes, of course. He's the co-director of Singing in the Rain. He made Bedazzled.
I know, I love it.
He made The Pirate.
Well, Charade is one of my favorites.
You know,
So
Charade is too studio bound for me. Although the sound of George Kennedy's hook on that copper roof.
When he goes down the roof. Oh, I love that film. It's got a great opening credit sequence.
Well, who wrote the score? It's got a great score.
I think it's Henry Mancini.
Henry Mancini's underrated.
Yeah.
Because he wrote. Tobe Hooper made a movie called. It was called Space Vampires, but Life Force. Have you ever seen it?
I have not.
It's nuts.
Okay.
It's like, what the hell? It's a crazy movie and very fun. I recommend it. Life Force.
Okay.
But the score is by Henry Mancini, and the movie's really fun. It's genuinely nuts. It's like, who the hell made this movie? And it's filled with like really good actors. Patrick Stewart and Frank Finlay. I mean, really good actors. Anyway, and Matilda May is naked the entire movie, so that's worth seeing for that. But the movie has a score by Henry Mancini that's so good that, a dramatic score.
Yes.
And it's so good. Well, that's the...
Well, and in the film, you have another great, musical score, musical numbers, so this is part of your signature.
Well, I love musicals. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
No one's offering many musicals, but they should.
I know. I think
my wife's convinced I'm gay, because I'm I've seen 15 productions of Gypsy.
Is that your favorite musical? Gypsy's one of the greats.
What's interesting is seeing it a lot. I saw it with Angela Lansbury as Mama Rose. I saw it with Bernadette Peters as Mama Rose. I saw it with Tyne Daly as Mama Rose. I saw it with, in the movie, Rosalind Russell as Mama Rose.
I think Patti LuPone did it.
Patti LuPone's, which was a really scaled down production,
right, was
amazing. And for the first time, you understood why Herbie and Mama Rose were together. Because you watch the movie, you watch that show, you think, why is he with her?
Right.
And it's because they had the most intense, best sex. They were crazy about each other. And he just put up with her and was really in love with her. And I've never gotten that sense. I saw Imelda Staunton do it in London. I've never gotten that sense from any other production why Herbie is with this woman. And but Stephen Sondheim is just amazing.
West Side Story, another great.
The music in West Side Story.
Yeah.
And Jerome Robbins, that's that strange thing with. He was so difficult, he finally had to leave the movie.
Yes.
And Robert Wise was very generous to give him I think, does he get a co-director credit? I'm not sure, but he sort of. But when you watch that film, the numbers that Jerome Robbins with Bob Wise supervised are as good as it gets.
Right.
Not just the opening.
Yeah.
But the
mambo scene.
The mambo scene, but I'm thinking of. I don't think he did the mambo scene. Did he? Is the mambo scene at the dance?
Yeah.
That's what he didn't do.
Oh, it is?
No, I'm thinking of.
Like he did all of them.
No, he didn't. He left
did.
them. But he choreographed them.
I see.
But it's shooting them and
I see.
The number in the boy, stay cool, boy. Look at the way that's composed. It with the roof in every shot in a garage, underground garage, and the way they come forward. It's just.
I've seen amazing pictures where they're on these scaffolding, and I mean it was unbelievable. To shoot those dance numbers,
You know what Stanley Donen movie I love?
What?
Is Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
Oh yeah, that's another good one.
Profoundly offensive if you think of what they're doing, but there's some extraordinary, the barn raising number. Did you know that was shot by George Folsey? And what's bizarre
Yes.
is that they didn't know if they'd release it CinemaScope or Academy. So that whole movie shot side by side, 2 cameras. So you can see prints of that movie, and it's a slightly different angle, and you think, wait, that's not right. Yeah, they made
right.
2 versions.
The only I'm gonna end with talking about Mr. Warmth because
Don Rickles,
Yes.
as you know, was lovely, sweet man, but also his talent was so unique. Mel Brooks is a tumbler like Jerry Lewis from the Catskills. It's very specific. Alan King, it's Billy Crystal, and Marty Short still has that kind of tumbling thing. It's a Catskill Borscht Belt thing. Rickles, who really came up through strip clubs and then the lounge in Vegas and the old Miami clubs, he doesn't tell jokes. And I'm fascinated by the fact that this guy's a world-famous comedian who has no jokes. He doesn't tell jokes. What he does is he's a cabaret performer. Did you ever see him in Vegas?
Yes, of course.
All right. Well, in a showroom.
Yeah.
Do you know there are no more showrooms?
No, I didn't know
No,
that.
they're all theaters now. In fact, in Mr. Warmth, the reason I made the movie was Rickles. He mentioned to me that he was performing at I forgot where it is in the movie, the Sands or the Sahara or wherever it is.
Yeah.
And after he's done, they're blowing it up. So I said, I got to shoot it, Don. I got to shoot your show. And he was very against me shooting the show because he said, but that's my act. I've been doing it since 1948. What am I going to do? And if you saw his act, then you know that 50 to 60% of every performance was pretty much the same. There was always that 30 to 40% that was totally riffing off the crowd.
Right.
And he had some jokes that it was, every time I saw him, it was a masterclass because he had a joke where he'd just stop in the middle of what he was doing and look at someone in the first or second row. And it didn't matter what they were. They could be black, they could be Jewish, they could be Italian, they could be Chinese. You Chinese? You an Arab? What are you, French? What? It didn't matter. Puerto Rican? What are you, Puerto Rican? It didn't matter what they said. If they said yes, he'd, or they corrected him and said
Right.
Irish, and then he'd go, Irish. How'd you get those seats? And it always worked. And the timing, do you know the best vaudeville joke? And I drop a name, George Burns told me this joke. I worked with him twice, and he told me a joke, and I'm sure you've heard it, but you are the young, up-and-coming comic, and I am the aged, legendary vaudevillian, respected and loved. Now, when I point at you,
Yes.
I want you to ask me, to what do you owe your great success, okay?
Yep. What
Timing.
do you... Works every time.
That's George Burns.
Every time.
And that joke I would watch Rickles and just be amazed. Anyway, he would create an ambiance in the room where he'd make a face. And he very often, things he was saying were not witty. They were not funny. It was that he was saying them
Right.
in that moment in time. He was the first comic to drop the mic. It's funny how it's become a thing now. But Rickles is the first one who used to
Yes.
drop the mic. And Jack, sorry.
Was there anything that you learned about him that surprised you through the process of filming him? How was he being filmed? He said,
Oh, he had no problem. I worked with him. I directed him like 4 times
yes.
and stuff.
He's
And
in
then
many of your films.
not many. No, he's only in like a couple of my movies. But I did some TV. Steve Martin was the executive producer of a show called George Burns Comedy Week. and it was an anthology comedy show. And he had all these different directors. And he asked me if I would do one. And my cast was Don Rickles, Don Knotts, Stephen Collins, Fannie Flagg. I'm trying to think of her name. Beautiful girl. Just this, and it was so fun. Don Knotts is one who had no idea how gifted he was. I never appreciated him. I said, my God, this guy's amazing. And then if you look back on Andy Griffith reruns, you see, oh yeah, he's amazing.
Yes. So I was asking you just to end up and how did he like the finished product of the film?
We loved it, of course, but it got made because his son Larry, who sadly has passed away, but Larry finally convinced him to do it. He did it for Larry. And then I took advantage of my own connections and stuff. It's kind of amazing who's in that movie.
Yeah.
And
it's a great film.
Great doc. It's very funny. And do you know that this is just my own beef, but nobody, the DGA, the Academy, and the Television Academy all would not accept it as a documentary. I said, why not? It's a documentary. They said it's too entertaining.
Interesting.
So HBO, in their wisdom, put it up as a comedy special, and that's what it won the Emmy for.
Wow.
It's a I don't understand, but they said it's too funny.
I don't know. I'm speechless. I
yeah.
don't know what to say. Can you do your follow-up on Bob Newhart?
Bob Newhart, he's the one, the famous, well...
They were friends.
They were best friends.
Yeah.
And Bob Newhart is
he's a fascinating
guy. He was an accountant.
Yeah.
Who used to be funny. And they said, you should do comedy.
Yeah.
And, but Bob Newhart, he's the one who, when Johnny Carson got married for the third time, that Carson was married to 3 women named Joanna. And so when Newhart gave his toast, he said, to a man too cheap to buy new towels.
All right, on that note, we're going to go out on a joke.
John, your book is?
Which book?
Monsters in the Movies?
Oh, yeah? I wrote a book called Monsters in the Movies. Oh, gosh, it came out in 2011, so you've no excuse if you didn't buy it.
Right.
And I think you can still get it on Amazon.
You can still get it on Amazon.
Okay. And please buy it. It's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't wait. I'm going to read it tonight.
Look. Do you want to hear something scary?
Yes.
It has interviews in it. It's got lots of photos, so it's fun.
Yeah.
That's good.
But it's got interviews with John Carpenter, Christopher Lee, Sam Raimi, David Cronenberg, Joe Dante, Guillermo del Toro, Rick Baker, and Ray Harryhausen. And because they're guys who make monsters. And what's so scary as I age is 3 of these guys have passed away already.
Oh, that's too bad.
Isn't it weird?
Yes, it is weird. I think it's weirder. I got through the whole show. We didn't get to talk about Thriller or Werewolf, but you'll come back for part 3, right?
And I won't swear.
And you won't swear next time.
You can buy Illeana's book, I Blame Dennis Hopper, on Amazon. Also, check out our Facebook page. The website is illeanaspodcast.com.
That's right. And as we always end our show by saying, everyone's life is like a movie. Do you believe that? I believe that. Do you believe your life is like a movie? It's a movie for me. Your life sounds like a movie.
Do you know that movies, know this, you've directed, but movies, motion pictures,
yes,
you tell a visual story through the juxtaposition of images. So it's take after take, shot after shot, every shot, and then you cut them together to create a narrative. And what's interesting is nobody knows why that works. For instance, if you show a movie to Aborigines who've never seen movies, they'll be able to follow the story even without sound. If you just show the exterior of a building and then people in a room, we know those people are in that building. That's where that room is. There are things, cinematic conventions in montage. Why do we know it? And everyone knows it at every age. And I think it's because that's how we dream. And what people say all the time is it's like a movie.
Yeah, it is. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for ending the podcast. Everyone's life is like a movie with a beginning, a middle, and the end. This is the end of our podcast, part 3 to be continued. Thank you so much, John.
Thank
It's been
you.
an absolute delight.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you
everyone.
next time.
From
Please
producers
come
Maria
back.
Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.